No matter how you go, Minister, with all due respect to Jerry, if you kill four, or if you get rid of 400 of them in a day, multiplied by what you're offered, and wouldn't even pay the wages of a person, or I'll tell you, if he worked for that, I'll tell you one thing, it's unbelievable. So where is the discrepancy?
Jerry, do you want to come in there? Thanks.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Minister, and thank you, Chair. I think, Chair and Deputy, it's to do with maybe the fact that we haven't got this sort of detail from the farmers, and we went about, as the Minister has said, using consultancy expertise here to come up with these figures. In the absence of the detail from the farmers, so they haven't provided that detail to us. So in the absence, we have put these values in place. To explain the value to you, it's to do with the costs of labour and material. Yeah. Which is the labour cost of killing these mink, and the material then is the carbon monoxide gas that's used. That's the 35 cent per mink.
Jerry, with all due respect, and I hope you go back and look at this, with all due respect, 35 multiplied, because I asked what would you kill in the day, and between 400 and 500. With the best will in the world, let's get a good day. The 500 is about €175. You'd have to give it to a person doing the work for the day. And I would ask you to go back and look at that. Second of all, the department appears to be offering 2 weeks statutory redundancy. These people aren't leaving their jobs or being taken out of their jobs because they want to leave them or anything. They are doing a favour to basically whatever was agreed in the programme for government, which I probably wouldn't agree with. But anyhow, that's the way it is. The department are offering 2 weeks redundancy. I put a few questions together here now. Why would, we have seen the Debenhams case, and we've seen a lot of cases. Would government not lead from the front and say, well, the least they need is 4 weeks or whatever redundancy to look after those workers who are, like, bear in mind that these people are working with you, they're not working against you. The third question I have, so that's one question. The third question I have, there's asbestos in a lot of these buildings that has to go to Germany, and €50 a square metre, I think, is the price. Yeah, €50 a square metre for getting rid of them and knocking the buildings. I tell you, whoever you got to commission the report, they don't know much about farming, first of all. I'm not even talking about fur farming. But these so-called experts that want to go down on the ground and find out what building costs are costing at the moment. And that's my second question. My third question is, and I've looked at this myself without, it has been said to me, and I've gone through it right throughout Europe. This type of farmer looks to be like a 7-year cycle. Now, more than other types, you could get a few good years and a few bad years. And this looks to have like a 7 and a 7 and a 7 and a 7. 7 good, 7 middle, and 7 average. And they have looked for a 10-year cycle to do their costs about it. Are you prepared to do that? And the last question I have, because I want to give others the chance, the last question I have is, the department in 2012 brought out new regs and for animal welfare, and that's fine. And all of these people complied, basically spent large amounts of money in infrastructure, and we're not talking about just a 3-bay shed like that we're just looking at in the back garden. This was fairly strong stuff and expensive at what they've done. Why isn't there a genuine effort? Like, it's not that there's 5,000 or 50,000 of these farmers around the country. Why isn't there a genuine effort made to try and make sure that we look after them, be it employment, be it in the infrastructure, asbestos, and getting rid of all that, be it in a lot of these people have been with the banks, to be quite frank about it, because you don't build the infrastructure you require without having loans, simple as that. And why isn't that done? And why isn't the cycle, instead of a 5-year, which I've looked at this myself, over Europe, if you look at it, it's like a 7-year cycle, and that they are asking for a 10-year. Are you willing to cooperate with them on that? And after that, I want to let somebody else in. Thank you.
Okay, Deputy Fitzmaurice, Minister.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Fitzmaurice. So, obviously, the report has advised in relation to previous experience, but I'll ask Jerry to come in just to elaborate in relation to the rationale behind it, and to explain that. Obviously, part of the process then today is to tease this out and take on board views of the committee as well. But Jerry, you might outline the rationale. Thanks.
Yeah, certainly, Minister and Deputy. Grant Thornton in the report, just maybe at the outset to say that they're looking to, or we're looking to put together a scheme that's both fair and reasonable to the farmers concerned, and also fair to the taxpayer. So just I suppose to make that point at the outset, they did look at, of course, how best to compensate for a business that's been closed down, and looked at I suppose methodologies across other countries, and just in accounting in general. Just if you are looking to value a business, there are certain conventions and certain methodologies that you actually use, and they put forward then, I suppose, two methods really, and they combine them then in the end. But the first one is valuing the assets and the net book value of those assets, and then the second one is putting in place profitability over a period for the business is concerned. The thinking being that putting those two together then in a formula would best come up with a market value for those companies. In the formulas then, I suppose that's where the deputy is going here, is the 10-year cycle or the 5-year cycle. The 5-year cycle, we'd say, goes back in time 5 years and goes forward 5 years. So in calculating this profitability figure, the accountants are suggesting we go back 5 years to do your average, and you go forward then 5 to give them a multiple of that profitability going forward. The thinking behind the 5 and 5 was that these are multiples and are values that are used in company valuations, and for companies of this type. It would be very unusual to go back 10 years to calculate an average and go forward another 10. I suppose the thinking being there that 5 years should be enough to see the type of historic profitability of the company, and 5 years going forward should be adequate as well. And the 5 years going forward takes into account. I suppose anybody who's looking to put a value on these companies will say to themselves, it's going to take me 5 years to make my money back. But these sort of multiples and values, I suppose, were put together in that regard by Grant Thornton, just being conscious of the type of business, the size of business, the type of business, and so on that we're talking of. The 10-year cycle then, Deputy, and it's only recently that the farmers have actually come at us with some data here on those 10 years. We in effect have struggled to get any data from them. We first gave them notice that we'd required data back in November of 2020. And since that date, we subsequently sought that data again and again. Now, they did provide some data to us, but the data they provided was not adequate. The 10-year cycle and the 10-year period that they're talking of now, they have put together some trend lines for us just in their last communication, which is a little over a week ago. We haven't got a chance to actually look at that in any great detail, but we will look at it. I suppose the point I'm making here is that the Grant Thornton company put together the formulas and so on in the absence of specific data on the farms. Now granted, it did have information from statutory accounts that it could use, and in many ways, I think you can put together a model for compensation on the basis of such accounts. It's just we did need this detailed stuff that we've only recently got in the past couple of days. But certainly we can look at that 10-year period rather than 5-year. Do you want me to deal with the other questions? The asbestos.
Thanks, Jerry.
If you can, Jerry, on the asbestos and on the redundancy as well for the workers.
On the asbestos one, Deputy, we did get a chartered surveyor company to actually provide us with figures here. It was actually done through Grant Thornton. The Grant Thornton would have commissioned that company as a contractor to actually do that work for us. So we would be familiar with the level of asbestos on each of the farms, and we could then take account of the fact that asbestos costs a lot more than a fibre cement roof or whatever to actually demolish. So those figures were adjusted to take account of asbestos. Now the 50 euros per square metre. Look, the farmers are back, and they're talking of 62 euros per square metre. But again, like it's easy to pluck a figure out of the air. They haven't given us any sort of detail around their 62. As far as we're concerned, and we've done that, we have knowledge of the type of roof on each of the farms, the amount of roofing material, etc., to do a cap value. So on the basis of that, we put together a figure of 50 euros per square metre, which does take into account some inflation cost, building inflation cost. It's to drill down into that figure, the maximum figure we had originally was 47 euros per square metre. We rounded it up to 50 just to include some building inflation costs. But yeah, on the asbestos, I think an exercise was done by specialists here, and they are the figures they actually came up with. The redundancy then, I suppose, Deputy, we're just really doing what happens out in industry in general. Just when a company goes out of business, the company is bound by law to pay redundancy to its staff. It's statutory redundancy, and it's bound by legislation. So I suppose that's all we're doing here. We would be of the view that the farmers themselves could contribute extra to the workers if they wished. But we were suggesting that we'd only cover the redundancy as per the legislation. That's the 2 weeks redundancy, as you say.